Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds for Plymouth County, and this show is about Plymouth County real estate. Our headline for the month was Sales Down Slightly, Foreclosure Notices on the Rise. This is our November show, and we're talking about the October activity at the Registry of Deeds. We record records. We preserve and protect the documents by a scan in a microfilm system in an index system, and we try to serve the public in as customer-friendly way as possible. But let's go to the numbers. You're going to see a list of sales of property as well as a chart of deeds as we begin the show. There are 893 deeds recorded in October, less than the 1,053 in September, down 26% from last October, but year-to-date up 3%. And the chart shows the trend over the months. The list of deeds and the unit deeds show activity through all 26 communities, 26 towns and one city in Plymouth County. We're going to go to mortgages now. Mortgages have been really high this year. People have not only used mortgages to purchase property, but they've also been using it to refinance their present mortgages. There was a story that came out this week about the mortgage rate being a roller coaster because it went back down under 3. But clearly, even if it goes up a little bit over 3 or down a little under 3, the rates are historically low. If you have not refinanced, please take the time to do so. So we recorded 2,928 mortgages in October, less than the 3,158 in September, down 15% compared to last year, but year-to-date, our mortgage filings are up 16%. The next document we always talk about are foreclosure deeds. Since the crisis of 2008, we follow foreclosure deeds very carefully. They're still very, very low. There was a moratorium in place, and foreclosure deeds have not been coming through to be filed with us. There are only 5 foreclosure deeds in the whole county of Plymouth in October, less than the 8 filed in September, and 55% less than last October, and 64% lower year-to-date. And that shows the impact of the moratorium and the freeze on foreclosures. However, the foreclosure moratorium has pretty much been released, and we're starting to see an uptick in foreclosure notices. A foreclosure notice is the first document we see relative to your property being in difficulty usually paying your mortgage. There were 32 foreclosure notices recorded in October, more than the 25 in September, over 200% more than last October, and year-to-date still down 25%. And you're going to see a listing of every community in Plymouth County in the foreclosure deeds and foreclosure notices for every town from Abington to Whitman alphabetically. Plymouth and Brockton have always been the highest ones and continue to be, this time, not so much in terms of deeds, but in terms of notices which start the process. So beware that we have a free property fraud alert on our website that you can sign up for. All you have to do is enter your email, and if a document gets recorded, you'll get an email. So you may notice that something went on record to your title that you didn't intend to, so you can take action right away. And I also like to warn people that a lot of companies are out there trying to get you to pay a lot of money for a copy of your deed. Companies will send out things to you saying you need a copy of your deed, $59, $80, as high as $90 for a copy of your deed. You can go to one of our 3 offices in Brockton and on 32 Belmont Street, in Plymouth at 50 Aubrey Street, or in Rockland over on Hingham Street in the AAA Plaza, and get a copy of your deed for $1 a page. So please take advantage of that. Don't get suckered into those mailings. I have a great guest coming up on the show, Scott Ferrier, a registered professional land surveyor with J.K. Holmgren Engineering. We'll discuss the role of surveying land in Plymouth County, and we'll give you some tips for you as a homeowner or a landowner, how you can identify your boundaries. So we'll see you in the next segment. Welcome back to the Register's Report. Again, my name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. In this segment of the show, we've always done something educational in nature. We've had people that have been in the realty business in various ways, realtors, commercial real estate brokers, commercial lenders, and anyone involved in the process. We've had some great stories about surveyors in the past, and I have a great surveyor with me today. Scott Ferrier of J.K. Holmgren Engineering is my guest today. Welcome.
Thank you, John.
I appreciate you coming, Scott.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
So you have this RPLS next to your name, and
yes.
You explain to me. Why don't you
Sure.
explain to our audience what
Sure.
that means?
In the Commonwealth and in all the states in the country, you have to be a registered land surveyor to practice land surveying. It's a little bit of a process. Includes both educational and actual experience. There's a test that you take through the Board of Registration, an interview process to go through, and then you get a license to perform and to oversee other land surveyors under you in the Commonwealth.
And the interview was relative to doing the work?
Relative to all the surveying work, that's exactly it. The board just reviews your experience, your education, asks you a whole bunch of questions, just make sure you're qualified to take the exam. Then you have to actually pass the exam, which is about an 8-hour exam. So it's a little bit of a stressful day to go through it.
Well, I took the bar exam. My son took the CPA exam.
Yep.
But I don't think either one of us ever had personal interviews.
The personal interview part is not fun because, they typically scrutinize everything that you have written down as your experience and your education. So that's definitely the most stressful part of it, more so than the test.
Sure.
Is the interview.
So why don't you tell our viewers a little bit how you got into the surveying world?
Sure. I started out in college just going for civil engineering, and part of the civil engineering program was surveying classes. It was an interesting topic, outside work, so that just kind of really appealed to me, and I got into the surveying end of things as opposed to the civil engineering end of things. So we're kind of grouped together in the civil engineering business, but they're definitely different tasks and different job titles. So
a land surveyor gets to be outside more as part of their job?
Primarily, right. Most of the work is done outside. Through the Register of Deeds, you have to research the properties, find record monuments, things like that, but actually get out in the field, do the surveying work, and then all of that information is brought into the office, and then there's lot calculations, surveying calculations that you have to do in order to actually draft the plan and get it either to the town or get it to an engineer to design some engineering component of the job. But most of the work is done outside in the field.
So I know with our deeds, there are boundaries included in the deeds, maybe not on the up-to-date deed, but somewhere in the chain of title.
Yeah, so really the first thing we do on a particular piece of property is go to the Register of Deeds website. Everybody's deeds are now online, as you know. Yeah. So it's really easy. You can sit right at your computer. If I just have your street address, I can plug in your address, and the deed comes up, and it's all in chronological order. I can look back at your property deed from 1850 if it goes back that far. And you would just pull up the deed. You can read the deed. Typically, they have angles and distances on them. In some cases, they'll have monuments. It might say 150 feet to a stone wall. Real old ones will say 150 feet to an oak tree, to a barn, There's all different methods of measurement in addition to feet and inches. There's rods and links that were used way back in the day, but everything starts at the Registry of Deeds. That information is, as I said, easy to access on your website. Once we get that, in order to survey a property, we start out with that subject property and just kind of keep building our way out from the subject property. So we'll get your neighbor's deeds, see what they say, make sure that there's no conflict between your neighbor on the right side and your property line, go to their neighbor's deeds and just keep building it out until we have enough information to lock in exactly where your particular piece of land is on your particular street.
So one of the reasons I was smiling as you were describing those monuments in the last segment of my show, today we have John Alden. John Alden was one of the original colonists, and we always do little stories about notable records. In his deed, when he moved to Duxbury, it had a certain distance of feet until the burnt walnut stump. Can you imagine 100 years later trying to find that
today?
Yeah.
And you do see quite a lot of those. If it said the 100 feet, then that makes it easy. You would just retrace the 100 feet.
Okay.
But in a lot of cases, it'll just say to the burnt walnut stump. Obviously, 150 years later, there's a good chance that stump is not there. So that's when you have to start going to your neighbor's deeds and their neighbor's deeds and really start building out the project to get back into your property.
Just curious, does GPS have any role in this anymore? At this point, I mean, it's kind of new.
It certainly helps, and it does make things easier, but it doesn't really help in tying down your particular piece of property. You own a 100 by 200 foot piece of property on Main Street.
Right.
The GPS doesn't tell me where that 100 by 200 foot rectangle lies on Main Street.
Okay.
So really, our job in determining your lot line still, as I said, starts at the registry, and then we have to get out into the field and start looking for things and digging little holes in the corners of the ground and look for old iron pipes and old concrete bounds that you see in the sidewalk sometimes, and, remnants of old stakes or stone walls or that burnt walnut stump that you were speaking of. So we have to actually get out there and find those points. Once those are found, then a GPS, other survey equipment can be used. But to get started, it really means getting out there and getting on your hands and knees and digging around looking for those old monuments.
So one of the most controversial things we've had in all my years at the registry are two most difficult things. One are beach right access, and the other one is boundary disputes, when someone builds on someone else's property and then tries to claim it by adverse possession or something. And I always say, get a registered land surveyor, stake it out, or put a couple stakes in, and you'll figure out where your actual boundary is.
It's definitely a good investment, especially nowadays with home prices being as high as they are. You're spending a lot of money. It's worth the small investment to hire a surveyor to get out there and mark your corners so you know exactly what it is that you own, and to ensure that nobody is encroaching on your property. That's most of the phone calls we get to stake out a lot or somebody's property. It's either because they want to put up a fence or because they have a dispute. They think their neighbor has his garden on their property, put up a fence, cut down some trees. So most of the time it usually involves some kind of a neighbor dispute. And hopefully when we get out there, as I said, we do all the research that's needed. We stake out the property, and we're very confident in what we've done. We typically would provide the homeowner with a plot plan, and more often than not, that plot plan, the two neighbors can talk it out and come to an understanding. But certainly sometimes it does proceed to a court proceeding. Land court gets involved, and it gets expensive and timely.
Timely, that's for sure.
But it does happen. But it's certainly, as you said, it's certainly worth it to get even if you weren't putting up a fence, just to know exactly where your property is. It's certainly worthwhile.
So for any developer or a person doing a subdivision, they would come to your office first to get a plan.
That's correct. Anything, any kind of land division, really any land use plans that need a permit from a city or a town. If you're just looking to put an addition on your house, you need a building permit plot plan. If you're looking to build a pool, you need a plot plan. And on that plan, we would show where your house is, how far from the lot line it is. If you're putting an addition, exactly the size of the addition, how far that addition will be from the lot line. And then based on our plan, in this case, the building inspector can look at it and say, yes, that building addition will conform to zoning. Everything's good, you get your building permit. In the case that it wouldn't conform to zoning, then they can kick you over to the Zoning Board of Appeals. If you're looking to divide your property, you have to go to the planning board for a subdivision, but it all starts with a land surveyor's plan to determine exactly what those distances to the lot lines and whatever the zoning issues are, typically need to be resolved by a land surveyor.
And I know that one of the functions of your company is to represent landowners in various boards in cities and towns.
Sure, we do
for
a
approval.
lot of work with homeowners, developers, but everything we do has to be approved by somebody. So we either go to the Board of Appeals, conservation commissions, planning boards. In a lot of cases, we go by ourselves. In a lot of cases where there's legal issues, we go with an attorney. The Board of Appeals typically is a situation where you would go with an attorney. You have to make a hardship claim to the board in order for them to grant you a variance. So that situation usually entails a plan that we prepare and then a legal brief that the attorney prepares, and that gets presented to the board. But a big part of our job, both surveying and engineering, is presenting things to the board, explaining it to them, answering any questions, and also answering any questions that the abutters would have to make sure that our project doesn't impact their properties.
So I assume in your field, as well as others, there have been a lot of technological changes over the years. We actually have a display at the registry in Plymouth that we have an original rod and length in one of the real old compasses.
Sure. Everybody's job's a lot easier. As far as engineering goes, the calculations are all done by a computer now. You don't need to do longhand mathematics. There's not as much of a chance for errors. So certainly in the engineering part of our business, it's a lot easier. But really the surveying part of the business, it's really easier now. Back in the day, as you said, you would have an old-fashioned chain that you would pull to measure distances. More recently, going back 30 years ago, you would have a steel tape, and you would have to have two people. You would really have to pull on the tape to make sure that it's stretched out properly. It would depend on the weather. If it was cold, the steel tape would shrink. If it was hot, it would expand. You would have to do calculations for that. And it was very, it took a lot of time to do a land survey job. Nowadays, with the electronic equipment, everything is much easier. It's faster. It's more expensive to buy the equipment, like anything else. You have to pay for that kind of technology, but the job is so much easier now than it was 20 or 30 years ago.
So can you share your contact information with our viewers?
Sure. Again, my name is Scott Farrier. I'm a registered land surveyor in Massachusetts, and I work for J.K. Holmgren Engineering at 1024 Pearl Street. John is a local icon here in Brockton. He's been around forever. He wouldn't like me to say that, but I tell him that all the time. He's formerly the city engineer in Brockton, has a long family history in the city, and we do a lot of work in all the surrounding cities and towns, but a good portion of our work is here in Brockton.
And how do you see us going into 2022?
Right now, COVID definitely hasn't slowed down our end of business. You drive around, whether it's Brockton or the smaller towns heading to Boston, there's just an awful lot of money being spent on construction. So for our business, it's a good thing, because all of that construction has to start out with surveying and engineering. So for right now, we don't really see any kind of a slowdown in the cards at all. Everything seems to be going ahead. Brockton in particular really has a lot of construction, a lot of exciting things going on in the downtown area. Just throughout the Commonwealth, there's a definite housing crunch. So I think as long as it stays that way, and as long as business remains in Massachusetts, I think there's always going to be a need for more housing. So for our business, it's really a bright future.
And for the simple homeowner dispute, if you're wondering whether your neighbor's shed has encroached on your property, with their apron of their pool has
Sure.
overextended the line. It's still great to get a boundary survey even on one side of the property?
It certainly is. It's, as I said earlier, you can go to the registry website, even if you don't know, you don't remember when you bought your property, you don't know where it's recorded. If you just plug in your street address, you can get a copy of your deed.
Yep, for $1 a page.
Exactly, and sometimes that will tell you exactly where it is. There's a stone wall, there's something that'll at least reinforce what your thoughts were. Everybody has an idea of where they think their boundaries are based on when they bought it, what the realtor told them, what their next door neighbor told them. So you can get that information, but to really be sure to protect yourself, to protect your property, it's really a better idea to have a surveyor come out and stake the property. To answer your question, as far as staking one lot line out, it's for the additional cost for whatever you would save doing a portion of your lot, it's really worth getting your entire lot line done.
Okay.
Most of the work that we do in the cost that we would charge you to do that stakeout is doing all of that research work, all of that digging around.
Okay.
The actual banging in of the stakes on your corner is the easy part of the job.
Okay.
So you're not going to save any money just having half of your property done.
That's
So
a great point.
as we said earlier, it's really a good idea for anybody that owns property. Get your property staked out. You'll know where it's there. We can put stakes in the corner. The better idea is to put iron rods in your corner. They'll stay forever. With a metal detector, you'll always be able to find them, and at least you always have peace of mind that you're on your land and I'm on my land.
Great information. Can you share your contact information one more time,
Sure.
Scott?
Again, it's J.K. Holmgren Engineering, 1024 Pearl Street. Our phone number is 508-583-2595, and we're always willing to help and anxious to have new clients come on board.
Great. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much,
Good
Sean.
job.
Appreciate your time.
Welcome back to the Register of Deeds Registered Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds. I want to thank Scott Ferrier for the great job he did discussing the role of a land surveyor in the real estate process. In this segment of the show, we always try to do something lighter in nature. The Plymouth County Notable Land Records Collection. Things we talk about, the holidays for the month was Election Day the 2nd, National Sandwich Day the 3rd, Daylight Savings Time began the 7th, Veterans Day was the 11th, National Pickle Day the 14th, Great American Smokeout on the 18th, the tremendous holiday of Thanksgiving on the 25th, and Hanukkah starts on the 28th. And so let's go right to a couple of our notable land records. So in recognition of Veterans Day, I have a couple stories of veterans. Deborah Sampson, who was born in Plimpton, the oldest of 6 children, entered into the Army, and she had to dress up as a man because women were not allowed to participate back then. So she entered into the Army under the name of Robert Shurtleff, and she fought many battles, including Terrytown, New York at West Point, and she was wounded 3 times. She was honorably discharged by General George Washington in 1783. She was married, moved to Sharon, gave birth to 3 children. Her likeness adorns the town flag of the town of Plimpton, where she was born, and there's a monument in her honor on the town green in Plimpton. In 1983, she was designated the official state heroine. Next, there was a settlement in Plymouth called the New Guinea Settlement at Parting Ways. It was one of America's earliest free black settlements. It's a site on the African American Heritage Trail. Parting Ways Cemetery is located on the former location of that settlement at Parting Ways. In 1792, the town of Plymouth granted the use of 94 acres of land to 4 Black Revolutionary War veterans, Cato Howe, Kwaname Quash, Plato Turner, and Prince Goodwin, and they established a settlement which you can still see today. There's a map when you enter into the property. There are graves there from those people that live there. It is a site located on Route 80 in West Plymouth, and there's a marble tablet recognizing the settlement. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places and protected by federal and state laws. The last county notable record is one of our great Mayflower descendants, John Alden. John Alden came over as the cooper on the Mayflower, in charge of the beer. He came over on the voyage. Rather than return to England in 1621, he chose to settle in the new colony. There's a great poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow called The Courtship of Miles Standish, when the great warrior Miles Standish was courting Priscilla Mullins at the time, and he used John Alden as an intermediary. Priscilla fell in love with John, they married, and eventually moved to Duxbury, and there still is a site known as the Alden Estate located in Duxbury, which receives visitors. The Alden House was built as early as 1653. There are other properties on the site now, but I will tell you that the Aldrin Kindred of America maintain the house as a public museum, and they are the most prominent of all the Mayflower descendants. And last but not least, one of our Plymouth Colony records, we just completed the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower's arrival. It was very difficult during the COVID times, but we were able to tell some of the stories. This particular one is a story of life in the colonies. In 1639, a law was passed that whoever shall profanely swear or curse the name of God shall be set in the stocks for not less than 3 hours. There was also a law passed in that year making it illegal to have any conversations dealing with witchcraft. And there was also a law that made every community in Plymouth County put up stocks, a pair of stocks and a whipping post. There were very harsh penalties back then to penalize people that violated those very harsh laws. So I want to thank Brockton Cable Access. This is my 133rd show here. We do one a month. I want to thank Lorna Grain Beaker and Christine Richards from my office to help me put the show together. Isaac Cabral here from Brockton Cable Access did the one-man band managing the show, the control room, as well as the cameras. And I want to thank Brockton Cable Access. We burn a copy of this show provided on CDs to the local cable access providers throughout Plymouth County to share with people information about what for most people is their most valuable asset, their home. So have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next month.